Okay, think about this. What if I told you that the entire structure, of modern wealth, it's built on a technological choice that's actually fundamentally pretty fragile. A choice where like 92% of the money you deal with is just digital bits on centralized servers,
Yeah.
controlled by just a few big players. Would you feel totally confident in that? We often treat finance like it's some immutable law of nature, right? But money is just a technology, and arguably the current version. It might be ripe for replacement. Welcome to this special Book Talk Finance. Today, we are diving deep into The Internet of Money by Andreas M. Antonopoulos.
Yeah, this is a really foundational text. I'd say it's a crucial starting point for anyone who wants to understand not just the mechanics of Bitcoin, but its whole philosophy, its societal impact. In this book, it's actually a collection of the really influential talks that Antonopoulos gave between 2013 and early 2016. A lot of us who were around back then, we feel he did more than pretty much anyone else in those early days to, translate Bitcoin's really profound promise into simple, understandable terms for everybody.
He does have this knack, doesn't he? He strips away all the super complex cryptography and the computer science stuff and just reveals the core idea. And he uses these great analogies, incredible passion, and just real clarity of thought. So we're not just talking about a currency here. Our mission today, really, is to frame this moment as the birth of what Antonopoulos calls the Internet of Value, or the Internet of Money. It's a revolution, he argues, with an impact that could be as big, maybe even bigger, than the first wave of the Internet.
Absolutely. And to really get the scale of disruption, you kind of have to appreciate that the history of money itself, it's a history of increasing abstraction. The very first big technological shift was moving past simple barter, right? Which was super inconvenient trading, like 2 goats for 1,000 bananas, that sort of thing. Moving from that to money as an abstraction. So using things like feathers or specific beads, maybe stones, stuff that wasn't valuable in itself, but it represented value because everyone agreed it did. Shared cultural agreement.
That was leap number one. Okay. Then, after thousands of years, the second big transformation happens. Precious metals.
Yeah.
Gold, silver. They became the go-to because, well, they were scarce, easy to carry around, you could divide them up, they lasted. They basically ticked all the boxes for a good, universal medium of exchange.
Right. And then came what you could call the paper shock. Seriously, if we think people are skeptical about Bitcoin today, imagine the initial reaction to paper money. You, the citizen, you deposit your actual gold with someone trustworthy, say a bank, and they give you this piece of paper, a note, promising you can get your gold back later. Then people start trading the paper instead of metal. People must have absolutely freaked out, thinking, wait a second, this paper, it's worthless. I'm trading a promise, not a real thing.
Yeah, I think that historical skepticism is so important. It took, what, 400 years for paper money to be widely accepted?
400 years,
Oh.
exactly.
Which makes the paradox we live in today even weirder, right? Physical currency.
Yeah.
It's almost like an antique now. Less than 8% of the US dollar or the euro actually exists as physical bills and coins. The rest, over 90%. It's just entries on centralized digital ledgers, bits controlled by banks and governments.
And that's precisely what sets the stage for Bitcoin. It's the latest and maybe the most abstract iteration yet, and it moves us past that digital centralization problem. I mean, think about it. Credit cards were invented in the 1950s. They weren't designed for the internet age at all. Bitcoin, though, it's the only truly mathematical currency today. Okay, critics might call it a shared cultural hallucination, and maybe there's a grain of truth in that, like all money. But its value comes from verifiable scarcity, from a network protocol built specifically for this global digital world we're in.
Okay, let's unpack that protocol a bit. Traditional finance runs on what Antonopoulos calls a client-server model, right? Or even a master-slave architecture. So
Right.
when you put money in a bank, you feel like it's yours. But legally speaking, it's not.
Legally, no. You've actually loaned that money to the bank. It's a system fundamentally built on debt. That's the core constraint. If you owe the bank money, obviously you're constrained. But even when the bank owes you money, your deposit, you're still a slave in that relationship. You play by their rules, their hours, their regulations. You need their permission, basically, to move your funds if it's over a certain limit, or if you want to send it across borders.
Wow, that sounds inherently precarious for the individual, actually. So if Bitcoin is the opposite, what does that look like, architecturally speaking?
It's P2P, peer-to-peer. And that's fundamentally different because every single participant speaks the protocol on an equal footing. There's no master server, no central control point, and it's based on absolute ownership. You know the saying, possession is 9/10 of the law?
Yeah.
Well, in the Bitcoin protocol, possession of the cryptographic keys. That's truly 10/10 of the law. The math controls the money, not human institutions.
Okay, and this P2P structure enables something completely revolutionary in finance.
Hmm.
Network neutrality. We're going to get net neutrality for the internet, right?
Right.
The network doesn't care what data it's carrying.
Exactly.
Bitcoin does the same for money.
Precisely. It is entirely non-discriminatory. The network doesn't care who you are, where you are, who you're sending money to, or why. You can send, 1,000th of a cent, or you could send $1 trillion. The fee is functionally the same
How can the fee be the same?
because the fees depend on the size of the transaction in kilobytes, how much data it takes to record it on the blockchain, not the actual dollar amount being moved.
Ah, okay. Data size, not value. Got it.
Hmm.
And the consequence of that neutrality
Mm.
is censorship resistance.
That's the big one, yes. If a transaction pays the required fee, it's legitimate. Full stop. The network has to process it. This flat architecture of Bitcoin, it just ignores borders, ignores identities. And Antonopoulos argues quite powerfully that this fundamentally killed the dream of nation-states creating a totally surveilled totalitarian financial system, that ambition. He says it died when the first Bitcoin block, the Genesis block, was mined back on January 3rd, 2009.
Wow. So the architecture itself prevents total control.
And that centralized architecture, the one that seeks control, it's failing billions of people by its very design. Because these systems, they're walled off by national borders, by class structures. They inevitably create exclusion. We're talking like over 2.5 billion heads of household plus their family, so billions more people with absolutely zero access to even basic banking.
And that exclusion often turns into outright exploitation, doesn't it? Especially looking at international payments. That part of the book really hit me. Immigrants around the world send something like $550 billion a year back home to poorer countries, India, Mexico, the Philippines. These are remittances, hard-earned money sent to support families.
Exactly. And the payment processors, the intermediaries sitting in the middle, they charge these incredibly high exploitative fees. The global average fee is around 9%. 9%. Now think about that. On $550 billion being moved annually, it's a staggering amount of wealth being drained away. It's basically this huge involuntary tax levied almost entirely on the poorest working people on the planet.
Why is the traditional system so bad at this? Is it just greed? Or is there something fundamental about the old architecture?
It's fundamentally the friction. It's the cost of compliance, navigating all the different regulations, the KYCML overhead, know your customer, anti-money laundering rules. Plus, it's the slow, complex chain of intermediary banks that all have to talk to each other, and they all take their cut along the way. Centralized finance just can't operate cheaply across borders because borders are its defining feature. It's built around them.
Right, the borders are the friction.
Okay.
And that's where Bitcoin comes in with this, revolutionary ethical fix, the possibility of actual inclusion.
Precisely. Imagine that immigrant worker, instead of paying 9% to send money home, they pay a flat fee. Maybe 5 cents, maybe less sometimes.
Not a percentage, just a tiny flat
It's
fee.
just a tiny flat fee, regardless of the amount sent. Think about what that does. Suddenly, every basic feature phone you know, those simple Nokias, the most mass-produced device ever, it becomes not just a bank account. It becomes your own secure Swiss bank in your pocket, where you, and only you, control the private keys. You have ultimate sovereignty over your money. That's empowerment on a massive scale.
Yeah, that's incredible. And this shift, it's driven by innovation happening at the edges, right? Just like the early internet.
Exactly like the early internet. Antonopoulos calls Bitcoin a dumb network, and he means that as the highest compliment. A dumb network doesn't have intelligence built into the core. It pushes intelligence out to the edges, to the users and developers. And that means innovation can happen organically, permissionlessly, without needing approval from some central authority.
Yeah, he calls it the Festival of the Commons. Because it's an open protocol, anyone, any brilliant engineer anywhere in the world can just build amazing things on top of it. He mentioned some key early inventions that are now industry standards.
Oh yeah, things like multisig, for example, that requires multiple cryptographic keys to sign off on a transaction. Hugely improves security, especially for businesses or shared funds. Or hierarchical deterministic wallets, HD wallets. These let you generate thousands, even millions of unique public addresses from just one single backup phrase, your seed phrase. Makes managing addresses and backups way simpler and safer. These incredibly powerful tools. They were invented by community members, given freely to the commons years ago, and now they underpin this whole ecosystem of new products and services built on Bitcoin.
And all this open innovation is happening while the incumbents, the traditional financial institutions, they're following that classic, predictable pattern when faced with disruption. At first, they just ignore it, right?
Right.
Bitcoin's a toy. It's a curiosity. A lemonade stand next to their Walmart empire, as he puts it. Then, step 2, they mock it. Remember the early days of cars? The owners were constantly ridiculed because their machines kept breaking down on the side of the road.
Exactly. And when mockery doesn't work, then comes the fear. And fear leads to really counterproductive regulation. Antonopoulos loves using the example of the UK's Red Flag Act of 1896. This law actually required that any horseless carriage had to have someone running 100 yards ahead of it, waving a red flag to warn people.
No way! A person running in front of the car?
Yes, they literally tried to force the new technology, the car, to operate under the rules and limitations, the slow speed of the old technology, the horse and carriage. It was pure fear of change.
And the result?
The result was the UK completely lost the lead in the automobile industry. They let fear dictate their response, tried to regulate the new thing into oblivion, and fell behind. It's the same pattern incumbents often follow. Think of Kodak ignoring digital cameras until it was way too late. They get disrupted by things they initially dismissed or didn't even see coming.
And this historical pattern leads us to this really critical concept he talks about, the infrastructure inversion. Right now, he says, Bitcoin, which is like the supercar of finance, is being forced to drive on these muddy, slow 19th century roads of the old banking system. We still rely on exchanges, on slow wire transfers. Like that story Antonopoulos tells about a payment from the German Federal Bank taking 16 days to clear. 16 days. In our connected world, it's absurd.
It really is absurd, but the inversion is the key idea here. Over the next, say, 15 to 20 years, that's going to flip. The distributed global ledger, the open blockchain technology, that will become the smooth, paved highway. And the old slow systems like balancing checks or those multi-day wire transfers, they'll end up running on top of the new global digital rails, if they survive at all.
So the foundation itself changes.
Exactly. And this new foundation, this new infrastructure, it supports way more than just sending money back and forth. This brings us to the idea of programmable money. Bitcoin isn't just a currency, it's a platform. It's a platform that guarantees certain trust functions using math. Antonopoulos describes it brilliantly as being like Lego blocks. The core protocol gives you these basic atomic elements, digital signatures, transaction outputs, time locks, these fundamental building blocks, and you can combine these blocks in new ways to build totally new financial applications, things that go way beyond just simple peer-to-peer payments.
Okay, give us an example. How do those Lego blocks combine to make something new?
Well, a great example happening right now is the Lightning Network. By cleverly combining multi-signature addresses with special time-locked contracts, developers created a whole new recipe. This recipe allows for near-instant, super high-volume payment channels that sit on top of Bitcoin. It dramatically increases speed and efficiency for small, everyday payments. Or think about something simpler. You could use those basic blocks, signatures, outputs, maybe a threshold, to create a self-executing escrow contract for crowdfunding. The funds are locked up, and they only get released to the project creator automatically if, say, a certain funding goal is met by a certain time. It automates the trust needed for escrow.
So you're building trust into the code itself. That's fascinating. And this programmability, this choice, it also shifts our whole relationship with currency, doesn't it? Historically, like you said, currency kind of chooses us. It's tied to where we're born, our nation state.
An accident of birth.
But now, with Bitcoin and then hundreds of thousands of other altcoins and tokens, people can actually choose their currency. And by doing that, they're sort of choosing their politics.
That's exactly what he calls metapolitics. It's a profound shift. You can choose Bitcoin, which is deflationary by design, enforcing scarcity, or you could choose something like Freightcoin, which was designed to be inflationary to discourage hoarding. You choose the monetary policy that aligns with your values. This is a fundamental inversion of where authority comes from. Think about the internet again. It shifted authority in information, right? From the owner of the printing press or the big newspaper to potentially anyone with a blog or a social media account who's actually telling the truth. The content producer gained authority.
Okay, I see the parallel.
Bitcoin does the same for money, for finance. Authority in currency is no longer derived solely from the government that issues it, backed by its military or laws. Especially after the financial crisis of 2008, the perception started to shift. Maybe it's not that sovereignty creates currency, but that currency creates sovereignty. The internet is the world's largest transnational economy, and now, finally, it has a native transnational currency to match.
And the resilience of this technology.
Yeah.
That's one of the most powerful points in the book, I think.
Oh, yeah. Antonopoulos famously called Bitcoin the zombie of currencies because it just refuses to die. How many times have we heard Bitcoin is dead declared in headlines?
Countless times.
Exactly. This network is under constant attack, 247 from all sorts of actors. Yet the protocol just keeps running, keeps getting stronger, more resilient. It learns from attacks.
And it's censorship resistant, partly because the transaction itself has become just information, disconnected from any physical medium.
Precisely. A Bitcoin transaction, which might only be 250 bytes of data, can be encoded in almost anything. He gives examples like you could encode it as 500 smiley faces and send it over Skype.
Seriously. Smileys.
Yeah. Or if they shut down the entire internet in a country, you could broadcast the transaction data via shortwave radio using a simple fence line as an antenna. You can't stop information from propagating. It's incredibly hard.
So you just can't easily censor it.
You can't easily stop it. And this decoupling of value transfer from traditional channels, it opens the door to applications we probably can't even imagine yet. Think about, say, a digital autonomous charity, an organization that exists purely as code on the blockchain. It could automatically collect donations, maybe monitor social media for keywords indicating a natural disaster, and then automatically marshal aid and distribute funds directly to verified recipients in that area. All without a board of directors, without overhead, without management fees. 100% of the funds go directly to the cause, secured and executed by math.
Wow. That potential that's truly motivational, especially when you think about the next generation. For so many young people today, Bitcoin or something like it might be their very first experience with finance, with economics. They're downloading apps, maybe getting tipped online, and gaining absolute control over their own money at like 10 or 12 years old.
Exactly. So by the time those kids turn 16 or 18, whenever they can legally open a traditional bank account, they're going to walk into that bank, if they even bother, and they ask, wait, what do you mean you close at 5 p.m.? What's a business day? Why did my wire transfer take 16 days? Like in Andreas' story, why do I need your permission to send my money across the street or across the world? They'll be completely done with traditional banking before they even start, because they've already tasted true, global, permissionless, peer-to-peer finance.
That really is the ultimate promise explored in the Internet of Money, isn't it? That this isn't just some technical upgrade. It's a potential re-architecting of global trust, of sovereignty, of economic freedom itself, all built on this foundation of open protocols. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this crucial book talk. It's been fascinating exploring these massive shifts in finance with you. And for everyone listening, be sure to subscribe to the channel. We'll have more discussions and talks on how these open protocols are continuing to change the world.